Welcome to the Exposer. Today we'll be exposing the brother of Spac Nation's main pastor, Tobi'S, known by most people as Reverend Dapo. He also holds the same surname as Tobi. So, Dapo Adeboyega is born in Nigeria. He's a 42-year-old and currently works at Spac Nation as a reverend. He came over to the UK and studied at the University of Wales. He apparently also preached in Wales and many other countries. He's married to another pastor, a lady that he's been with for more than 14 years, known as Lola Adeboyega. So years later, Dapo joined a church known as Webic London HQ, which is owned by co-founder of Webic Worldwide, Prophet Dr. Samson Oyerende. Another pastor known for a few controversies regarding money, and someone who, at a point in time, Nigerian police were after due to allegations of money laundering and using checks to cash from unknown resources. So Dapo has a history of being under controversial leaders. So Dapo became one of the main leaders at the Webic London HQ. And under his leadership, a lot of problems started to occur. He started to ask members to raise humongous amount of money. He also started to have problems with rent. So there was a lot of financial issues. A lot of members walked away. But eventually the church got shut down. So it's unknown whether the charity commission stepped in to shut down the church or they decided themselves to shut it down. So online we've had a look at the church's financial documents, especially in 2014 and 2015, where Dapo was very prominent in the church. And where it's blue, you can see the highlight of the income, and in yellow, the spendings. So in 2014, the church made about £300,000 and the spendings was about £200,000. But then you see a drastic drop in 2015 where the church makes about half of that. So just about over 150k, and the spending is about 145,000 pounds. So how did they go for so much, and then the following year the decrease was so high to almost half of the earnings? Something never added up. So you can see that was probably the beginning of the downfall of the church. They probably started to use the same techniques as Spac, probably hiding money. But what we do know is something happened for the church to be closed down, and we know that Dapo was a big part of that. So 2017 was the year that Dapo officially left Webic to join Spac Nation, to rejoin his brother. And at Spac Nation, he was actually ordained there as a reverend by his own younger brother, Tobi'S. And he also brought some of his ex-members from his old church to Spac Nation, because there was a few that still believed in Dapo because of the lies he told them and the reasons he gave them for his church being closed down. So some followed him to Spac Nation. So Tobi was very happy because that allowed his church to grow in numbers also. Because at the time, Tobi'S church, Spac Nation, wasn't really known like this. They never had the same reputation as today. But they did start to generate a decent amount of money. It looked like Tobi and Dapo both came to the UK with plans of having their own church. And it looked like for Dapo, unfortunately, things did not go to plan. But he always had his brother. They both had each other to depend on each other in case something like this ever happened. And this is exactly what happened. So we have two brothers who come from a family of pastors who claim they came to the UK for different reasons, but both ended up becoming pastors, and both having a reputation for encouraging members to raise ridiculous amount of money. So whilst Dapo was at Spac Nation, he had a low profile. He had to remain low-key because of his past experiences whilst leading the church. And it was a bit easier for him because he now had a brother who was more controversial, a brother who was outspoken. So no one would keep an eye on what Dapo was doing. So Tobi, who liked the limelight and he liked the famous lifestyle, will take it upon him to be the face of Spac Nation. So with Dapo, we know that he's in full-time ministry. He has never spoken about having businesses or anything like that. But we still wonder where his income comes from. Because if you look at Spac Nation's income, they claim only 35k is paid to their members. So that will ask us the question, where does Dapo get his money from? Where does he get his income from? Especially if he's in full-time ministry. Something doesn't add up there. Which goes back to the fact that we know that Spac Nation are clearly receiving a lot of cash and finding ways to put their income in places where no one can trace it. And that's what Dapo is probably doing, because we do not know where else his money is coming from. He has never really spoken about owning properties like PT has claimed. He has never really said he owns businesses. But then Spac Nation claims they only pay a small amount of money towards their members. So with Dapo, what he would do is he would follow his brother around and he might preach for about 10 minutes and then would sit down and let his brother take over services. He has a member that follows him around everywhere, a guy named Onyeka. And I can confirm Onyeka is a very, very vulnerable member. You might see him on social media defending Spac Nation a lot. You might see him praise the pastors a lot. But I can confirm that Onyeka is a very, very vulnerable member. And he doesn't see it right now, but hopefully he sees it in the future. And he's a guy who follows Dapo and does everything that Dapo tells him to do. Dapo isn't part of the trap house system. He lives with his wife and kids, so he doesn't allow himself to really be involved with outside members. Maybe because he's afraid of controversial things coming out from his house, so he's trying to stay safe. As we know, he is the older brother of Tobi, so he probably is a bit wiser when it comes to having too many people around him. This is the reason why you won't see Dapo at Tobi's house whenever he's doing the periscopes. He tries to avoid surrounding himself with a lot of kids. But we do not know what he uses Onyeka for. There's a big question mark there also. One of the main things that Dapo does at Spac Nation is prophecies. He's well known for prophesying a lot of things. Something that the members are still waiting to see, if his prophecies are actually true. He will use it to his advantage to then deliver a message about giving and encourage members to give and why it's really important to give. I've heard it out of my own ears sometimes, Dapo mentioning that members should be given at least £200 every month. He doesn't behave like PT and he doesn't deliver his message about giving the same way PT does. Because like I mentioned, they have totally different personalities. Dapo comes across as more of a kind person, less arrogant. So he will say in a way which could persuade some members to give. But it's just a different strategy that he's using. But at the end of the day, he's still delivering the same message, which is pressuring his members to give a certain amount of money. It's manipulation, because people who really believe in Dapo automatically feel like they have to give. And they feel like his charm as well, and the fact that he's not controversial and someone that doesn't speak a lot in the church. When he does speak, members tend to feel like it therefore has a lot of importance. So even though he doesn't talk a lot as Spac, he's still very well motivated and driven by financial gains. Remember, this is a guy who had his own church, a guy who was very vocal in his own church. He's now joined his brother and he's decided to take a backseat. There could be some jealousy, but I don't think Dapo is jealous of his brother, like some people have mentioned. I believe that Dapo is very comfortable because he doesn't have to do much. All he has to do is let his brother do the talking. Spac will raise huge amount of sums every single month and Dapo will get a cut out of it. So I believe he's just very comfortable where he's at. At one point, Dapo was actually going to Webeck and Spac Nation. At one point, he tried to go to both churches, and then just ended up staying in Webeck because he had more importance there. But it's also important for you guys to know that in 2012, Dapo actually took part of Spac Nation's company, Salvation Proclaiming Ministries Online, and he was actually director, and where he resigned in 2014. Which shows that Dapo will go anywhere where there's money. Money is his main motivation for being part of a church. And it's very unfortunate because there's a lot of members who look up to Dapo, and there's a lot of people who are deceived by how Dapo conducts himself at Spac Nation. There's even a lot of members at Spac who want to quit but are still there because they believe that he is the good brother, he is the brother that isn't part of the corruption. But a little bit of digging in the history of Dapo, you will see that he is the same as his brother, with a different personality, and he's just a smarter brother in terms of keeping a lower profile. But at the end of the day, Dapo is after one thing, and that's money. It's not about souls, it's not about helping people, it's about wealth. And that's what him and his brother had as a plan all along when they decided to join this country. They can continue to lie to deceive the public and pretend that they're doing a lot and changing a lot of lives, but there's a lot of questions that are not answered, and Dapo, no Toby, will ever be able to prove where their income and their wealth comes from. So this is the exposing of Dapo Adabayega.